Nice dress.
Thanks. I bought it at Versailles. In the Forum?
Oh, yeah, Versailles. I love Versailles.
Me too.
A woman goes from giving lap dances at a strip club to headlining a topless revue on the Las Vegas Strip. This week, we talk about Alien Ant Farm's Michael Jackson cover, a sex scene that looks like a shark attack, and what strippers have in common with the Sith. Yeah, the Sith from Star Wars. We also discuss our 2020 voting plans before finding out if Showgirls stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says gladiator with a glutton. Alan says as a father, blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Test of Time podcast. My name is Alan Noah, and who might you be?
I'm James Brief, joining you for the 200 and so. Wow, it's been, we're way past our bicentennial.
Yeah, this is episode 222. 222. This episode also comes out on October 2. That sounds weird. October 2nd. Which is 1 month before the election in the United States, or a month and a day, technically. But I just want to use this opportunity to say that you should vote. Everyone should vote. I have made no secret of my politics on this podcast before. I am not going to apologize for my opinions, but I'm not even making this a political thing. Just vote. If you're listening to this and you are in the United States, please vote. Register to vote now. Go to vote.gov, go to vote.org, make sure you're registered. Even if you're like 99% sure that you are, just double check. It takes 2 seconds. Do it while you're listening to James and I blather on about Showgirls. Do something productive. If you haven't registered for some reason, register now. Maybe you moved because of the pandemic and you're in a different state. Maybe you want to request an absentee ballot. Whatever it is, do it. And people keep saying, make a plan. And that's like a really important thing. Have a voting plan. It's like a psychological trick, kind of. Don't just say, oh, I'll vote, probably. I'll get around to it, sure. Like, no. Think about how you're going to vote. When are you going to vote? Where are you going to vote? Are you going to do early voting? Are you going to mail in your ballot? If so, do it early. If you're going to drop it off, find out where you're going to drop it off. Put it in your calendar. Set an Alexa reminder. Whatever you have to do, make a plan, do it, vote. It is very, very important. Go to ballotpedia.org, look up all of the down ballot races. Yes, all eyes are on the presidential election, of course, but there are many important smaller races. Depending on where you live, there could be things that could affect you in your day-to-day life. This is important. As Americans, it's our right, it's our privilege. We should do it. So I am encouraging everyone to vote. Just get out there and vote.
I do remember the words of a high school teacher of mine that reminded us that what is legal and what is moral is whatever 50.1% of the representation and people say is legal and moral. I just say this because, the statistics show consistently, and I've said this before, that young people don't vote. Even in super important elections, we don't vote, or we don't vote nearly as much as the senior citizen vote. So we could take this country at any time by the most legal way that any democracy allows, which is just choosing. If people like a certain thing, just choose it. It seems weird to me that the people with the least amount of time left on this earth are making the most important lifelong decisions that last 50 years, and the people that have 50 years left on this earth don't decide to plant seeds for the next 50 years. I obviously have my opinions. Al, you're a little more vocal about yours. But really, whatever it is, just vote, because this is the protest. This is the bloodless coup that happens in every democracy every 4 years, or in America with the change of the guard of our presidency, or, the renewal of the guard. So just vote. It is your civic duty. November, or if you're in a state that allows voting early, just vote early. That's just the easiest thing to do. That's the best thing ever, early voting states.
Yeah. My voting plan is I already requested an absentee ballot. Whenever that arrives, it hasn't arrived yet, I am going to fill it out, and then I will hand deliver it to an early polling location in New York, because I don't fully trust the postal service right now, and I would rather just drop it off in person at an early polling location where it will be less crowded than on election day. So that's my plan. That's what I'm going to do. What's your voting plan, James?
I also requested an absentee ballot, but I actually think I'm probably going to go on election day at like 7 or 6 a.m. whenever they open because of my field. I happen to have an N95 mask, so I'm probably going to wear that. But you know what? If I didn't, wear your mask. Everyone else around you wears a mask. You're probably going to be okay. Also, another thing is to wear eye protection. If you have sunglasses are even fine, but if you wear glasses, certainly wear those.
Oh, I haven't heard that.
Yeah. There was a study I recently saw about Chinese patients, and the people that wore eyeglasses regularly had a lower rate of infection, which is possible because if they're droplets, they can enter your eye. So, yeah, that's possible.
Interesting. Yeah. I do just want to give a shout out to Matt and Shahir from the Only Podcast About Movies. I was recently listening to their episode about Bill and Ted Face the Music, and they had a thing encouraging their listeners to vote. And I thought that was a really great idea, so I stole it. I assume they won't mind. More encouragement to vote is always a good thing.
Well, speaking of voting, in 1995, the movie-going public sure did vote. And they voted against Showgirls.
That's not true. The movie-going public voted for Showgirls, and they swept the Razzies, the awards for terrible movies.
It did earn a lot of Razzies, but what it didn't earn is a lot of bucks.
Right.
I had actually never seen this film. Of course, being the age we are, what's the one thing we knew about this film when it was coming out?
That it had Jessie Spano from Saved by the Bell, and she was going to be super duper naked in it.
That's absolutely, probably word for word, what I would have said. In case people are not familiar with this, NBC in the early 90s, late 80s started throwing in some junior high and even, high school centered Saturday morning stuff. And they filmed some live action as opposed to the cartoon stuff like the Smurfs and Alvin and the Chipmunks. And one of the most popular ones our age, and legitimately, I would say it was kind of, a cool show, was Saved by the Bell. It consisted of the teen heartthrob, the beautiful cheerleader, the dorky nerd, the jock, and the brainy one, the fashionable one, every archetype.
Yeah, and in a way, that show is kind of iconic. Not necessarily because the quality was so high, but it was just something that everyone in our generation watched and knew and identified with. And if you say things like Screech, everyone knows who you're talking about. If you say a Zach Morris phone, everyone knows what you mean. And those archetypes that you mentioned, yeah, you'd seen them in 80s movies before, but this was those characters, but in a weekly show. And it was huge. It was very, very popular.
But it was also very rated G, barely even PG, because there's a very famous episode that everyone mocks where the Jessie Spano, the brainy character played by Elizabeth Berkley from Showgirls, she's getting addicted to drugs.
It was caffeine pills.
Yes, I'm getting that. In the actual original script, supposedly it was some kind of speed or amphetamines to study harder. And in the show, they edited it down to she was taking caffeine pills. That's how rated G this was. And they did have cheerleading outfits, but they weren't really too sexualized. And that's what made the idea of Showgirls mind-blowing, because when you say a super amount of nudity, you're correct. It was so much something that it was famous infamously NC-17, what previously been known as rated X, meaning unlike rated R, which is you can go in if like an older sibling or like your parents bring you in or, kind of buy you tickets. NC-17 is like absolutely no one under 17 admitted.
Right. And the reason that studios don't like to release movies that are NC-17 is because you lose a big chunk of your ticket buying population, and it greatly increases the odds that your movie will not sell a lot of tickets. But Paul Verhoeven, the director, really wanted this movie to be NC-17. He was planning on it being NC-17 like early in the process. Usually what happens is you make the movie you want to make and then you see what it's rated. He was like gunning for the NC-17 first, which is backwards. But that was the movie he wanted to make, and he made it. And the movie is about a woman named Nomi, played by Elizabeth Berkley. She hitchhikes to Vegas, where she's promptly robbed of all of her possessions. She befriends a woman named Molly, then begins to dance at a strip club. Nomi is recruited to join one of Vegas's hottest topless dance revues by its star, Crystal Connors. Using her talent, her body, and a well-timed shove of Crystal down some stairs, Nomi eventually becomes the show's new headliner. Unfortunately, Nomi quickly discovers that life at the top isn't all it's cracked up to be.
More or less, that's the synopsis of a really good film. It's a rise and fall, rise to the top, fame isn't all it's meant to be, a star is born, it's a timeless story. As someone who'd never seen this film, the story itself, what you say right there, the synopsis, is not really that bad.
No, it's a lot of well-worn tropes about bright-eyed person, hopes to make it big, goes to the big city, actually does make it, but then realizes that, this isn't what I really wanted. Yeah, you've seen that basic storyline in a lot of movies. This one just has a ton of boobs in it.
Yeah, and let's get the cat out of the bag. This is known as one of these famous bad films, but I was going to watch it with an open mind, and I also want to see, is this kind of fun bad? And I was really looking forward to seeing what exactly is the reason that this film has the reputation that it has. And so, just talking about the box office, Paul Verhoeven, he had made a ton of money for a lot of people, making some other 80s films. And I don't know if you noticed the producers in this film. I saw it was Max Cassar, where we had seen him before.
Was he on Total Recall?
I don't know if he possibly was, but I know I saw him in the Rambo films.
Oh.
So he's a famous Hollywood producer. So there's different reports, but up to a $50 million budget, somewhere from $40 to $50 million. And in 1995, that's an enormous amount. And it was, as we said, NC-17. And it opened at number 2 with $8 million on its way to only $20 million. So not even factoring marketing and everything, this film lost a lot of money.
Yes, it was a notorious flop.
It was. And just to quiz you on this, what do you think was number 1 at the box office that weekend? September 22nd, 1995. It also opened at number 1. We have not reviewed this film. We definitely will. It's one-word movie, and it has a number in the title.
It's a one-word movie, and it has a number in the title?
Exactly.
Oh, is the number replacing one of the letters?
Yes, but not really in a logical way. But
Right,
if you're
right.
fluent in the language, you'll know what it is.
Yeah, 7.
Yeah, 7. We'll definitely be doing that film at some point.
Yes. I would like to rewatch that movie.
When 8 comes out.
Right. I mean, I guess that makes more sense than 7-2, right?
7-2.
That would just be totally ridiculous.
Yeah. So, I'll say this film literally gets right into it. I haven't seen it since 1977 Star Wars. It just says, Showgirls, and it just goes right into the film.
Right, no opening credits.
Not even a space crawl, no John Williams. It goes right into the film.
Yeah, I don't really know that it needs a crawl for setting up the scene. You just see this young woman hitchhiking. She's going to Vegas. The guy who lets her into his truck is being a little flirty, maybe a little too flirty. And she pulls out like a switchblade and, is like, back off, buddy. Then once they get to Vegas, this guy says, hey, you know what? I know someone who works at this hotel casino. I'm going to set you up with a job. Don't even take your suitcase out of the car. I'll find you here in 10 minutes. He gives her $10, tells her to wait by the slot machines, and then he just leaves, makes off with her suitcase. I did have to wonder, though, what did he think was in her suitcase? Like, she doesn't seem like she has a lot of money. She's hitchhiking to Vegas. If the suitcase just has, like, clothes and underwear and toiletries and stuff, isn't that worth less than the $10 he gave her to play on the slots?
Absolutely. I mean, today there very well might have been a laptop, at least, an older MacBook or something he can sell for some drug money or something. But I imagine all she had was just, underwear and bras and just like some dirty shirts and stuff. As we learn later about her background, no, she does not have any money stashed away in this suitcase.
Right. It's not even just that, like, it's wrong of that guy to steal from her, which of course it is, but it's also just like a bad robbery. It's not worth it, especially because he gives her $10.
Right. So she goes outside the casino and she's all upset. She finds out that the truck is gone and she's screaming and she's banging on the car next door to her. And the woman who owns the car next door is like, hey, get the hell away from my car. And she's screaming at her like, this is the worst day of my life. And for no reason whatsoever, this woman says, why don't you come live with me?
Yeah, I mean, they go out for burgers and fries first.
Well, why does she invite this woman who started kicking and attacking her car? Why does she decide to buy her dinner?
Because this character, whose name is Molly, she is just an inherently good person, and she feels bad for Nomi, so she buys her food, and then she says, hey, if you don't have anywhere to crash, you can stay with me. Then you flash forward a couple months. They're living together in Molly's trailer. Molly is a costume designer, and she works at this Las Vegas topless revue, and she brings Nomi to the show, like backstage, and the star of this show is this woman named Crystal Connors, played by Gina Gershon. I'm not exactly sure how to say it.
I think it's Gina Gershon.
Well, then I'm sure it's Gershon. No offense. But I just automatically assume it's the opposite. But Nomi is really into mimicking the dance moves. She's just entranced by this because Nomi is also a dancer. And Molly introduces Nomi to Crystal, and she says that she's a dancer just like her. But then Crystal's like, oh, where do you dance? And Nomi says, at Cheetah's, which is a strip club. And then Crystal says, oh, so you're a prostitute. Or maybe she says whore. But that is a recurring theme that happens over and over and over again in this movie, that people tell Nomi she's a whore, specifically Crystal telling Nomi that she's a whore, and Nomi getting really pissed off and upset about it. And in this case, she gets so upset that they go to this club, not a strip club, just like a dance club. And there she meets a guy named James. Isn't that right, James?
Yeah, and I recognize this guy. This guy must have been, he had a good agent in the mid-90s, because he's the guy from Speed and Speed 2. He's the guy from Speed who, Keanu Reeves' character, he's like, police, I need your car. He's the African-American guy who just unfortunately, his car gets destroyed. And then I think in the second one, he finds some treasure at the end because of the adventures or something.
Really? I had no idea he was in Speed 2.
Yeah, he has a small cameo at the very end. Like, I think the bad guy's, like, loot, like, washes ashore, and he's like, look what I found. I've seen that film once. I can't believe I actually remember that.
That's really funny.
Yeah, I think I saw it in the theaters, too, so it's been a long time. But anyway, yeah, she meets the guy, James, and she starts a fight. She gets thrown in jail, and James bails her out. But Nomi wants nothing to do with James, even though he's not really specifically sexual to her, at least at first. And she just says, fuck you, and walks away. She's not really very grateful to people that have been trying to help her.
Right. I mean, like why does Molly buy her burger and fries and let her move in with her? Why does James bail her out? Like, she started a fight at the club by kicking him in the crotch. Then he got fired. And he even kind of makes a joke about it, like, you're a pain in my ass and a pain in my head and a pain in my balls, but I still bailed you out. And she's like, yeah, okay, weird. And then she leaves. She is ungrateful, but it is also weird that he did that.
Yeah, and if there's a character that's maybe more of a loser than the James character, that would be the character named Al.
Okay, I deserve that.
That is the manager at Cheetah's.
Yes, and that actor was in Goonies. He is one of the Fratelli brothers, the one who isn't Joe Pantoliano. Robert Davi is the name of the actor. We just recently watched The Goonies with the kids again. And then when he popped up in this movie, I'm like, hey, it's the Fratelli, the other Fratelli. Yeah, Al is a scumbag.
Yeah, and I really like this actor's mama. She's an older woman. She's kind of a bigger woman. She kind of has like a topless comedy act, and she just comes out and then like her boobs come out. And I don't know if you've seen The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, but there's a character that Jane Lynch plays.
Oh, yeah, I know who you mean, yeah.
It's just kind of one of those like, trailer kind of women like, hey, you want to see my boobs? There you go. And she pulls a string in her dress and her boobs like pop out a little bit. She's a fun opening act, and I think everyone's in on it. No one's like, get off the stage, big lady. Everyone's kind of having fun with it. And then comes Jessie Spadow, the girl. I didn't have a crush on her. I totally had a crush on Tiffany Amber Thiessen's character.
Oh yeah, I was in love with Kelly Kapowski.
And I also liked Leia Remini, Zach's girlfriend in the beach episodes.
You mean Stacey Carosi?
Exactly, Stacey Carosi. I liked her too.
Is it weird that I, as a 40-year-old man, instantly knew that character's name, like without hesitating for a single second?
No, I could have figured it out too. It's sad for both of us. But that being said, here she comes. Elizabeth Berkley comes out. She takes off her top and dances around the poles, and it's a whole thing.
Well, she doesn't just dance around the pole.
She
licks the pole. That image, I think, is one of those things that people associate with this movie, even people who probably never even saw the movie. But it is really, really gross. And I mean, even just forgetting the fact that we're in a pandemic and we sanitize everything and we're constantly all washing our hands all the time right now, even before COVID, that's just really, really unsanitary and should not be done by anybody ever.
Probably not. And so in the audience, as she's doing her dance, is Crystal. Also showing up is her date for the evening, and that is a very 90s looking Kyle MacLachlan, who plays this guy, Zach Carey.
Right, and they ask Nomi for a lap dance. She says no, but they keep offering more and more money, and that scumbag Al is like, yeah, do it, private dance, $500. She does the dance for Zach while Crystal watches.
Yeah, she takes him in the back, and for $500, she gives him a lap dance until Zach finishes.
Finishes what? His memoirs?
No. He finishes in his pants.
He's writing his memoirs in his pants? I'm very confused about the memoirs.
Al, you know how you have 2 children?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so he basically tried to make children, but in his own pants.
That's not how it works.
Right.
I don't think.
This is not a I'm gonna rub my thigh. No, she is hanging on for dear life and swinging around him. It kind of resembled someone on a mechanical bull. She is just swinging around him faster and faster until, then you see in his eyes that he has finished in his pants.
Right. I like your euphemism for having an orgasm. But yes, and this proves Crystal's point that Nomi will do something sexual for money, therefore she is a whore. So Nomi should be happy that she just made all of this money, less Al's cut, of course, but she's pissed off. She goes home. James shows up at her door and is like, hey, you shouldn't be doing that because you have too much talent. By the way, he was at the strip club and he was watching this dance, which was pretty creepy. But it's also at the club, when they first met, James told Nomi that she wasn't a good dancer, and that's why she need him in the balls. Now he's saying, you're an amazing dancer, you've got too much talent for doing that, which is the complete polar opposite. And once again, she's like, all right, I don't care what you think, get the hell away from me.
Yeah. But then they meet up a little later, and he tells her how he secretly has this other dance show that he's trying to make. And, I was thinking, okay, this guy is a dancer. He said he was taught at the Alvin Ailey dance company. I don't know if you know what that is, but
yes, of course.
People maybe not from New York. Alvin Ailey was a very famous dancer in New York City, and his ballet school is very, very famous. So this is going to be one of those things like Footloose or Bring It On, or, where you incorporate the classic with the classy, and he has some kind of great dance, but he just can't get it made. Well, that's what I was thinking at first, and I was thinking, okay, I like this. And they have a really nice date, and he's showing her how good a dancer he is, and they kiss a little, which is fine, but they don't go all the way. And she says, no. She says, because I'm on my period. And that, it's not the kind of thing you usually second guess or say, oh yeah, I don't believe you. But imagine, Al, imagine you were to say to a woman, yeah, you're on your period, prove it. Well, I'll say that the character James here did not say that, but as if he did, totally unprompted, Nomi decides to reach into her own underwear and then pulls out her hand and then, well, proves to him that she's having her period.
Yeah, it's a little bit shocking and also unnecessary.
It's so weird.
Yeah. But then she leaves and James is just kind of like, okay. But then she goes and auditions for the show that Molly works at, where Crystal is a star. It's a revue called Goddess. And the director is this no-nonsense guy. He refers to himself as a prick. He calls her a Pollyanna, which is a reference to this like really old book and just kind of means somebody who's like eternally optimistic and is kind of naive because she's wearing like too much clothes. And then she like runs into the back and like strips down a little bit more and matches the other dancers. And she's a smartass to him, which he kind of appreciates. And it looks like she's going to get the role. She's one of the last like 3 girls, but then she has to take off her top and her nipples are not erect enough for him. So they give her some ice and tell her to put those on her nipples. That will help. And then she knocks the ice out of his hand and storms off because she's pissed off about that. She sees that Crystal's in the audience. She doesn't like that. Weirdly, though, she still gets the role.
Yeah, it is a little weird. Then she finally gets to leave Cheetahs. And I know they were going for comedy here. It's a joke that really doesn't work, but I don't want to rag on Elizabeth Berkley's acting skills here, 25 years later. But she finally has some money and she buys herself a Versace dress. Now, I know nothing about fashion. I have said Hermes before for the Hermès. Now, I know Versace, and now she doesn't know it, and she winds up pronouncing it Versace, which is kind of, I guess, how you would sort of pronounce it. I just didn't think it was funny, but in my mind, I was like, is this not a funny joke? And I'm like, it is a funny joke. And I was picturing Reese Witherspoon's, ditzy, Legally Blonde character who would definitely know this fashion brand, but just the way she would say, kind of smiling, Versace. And I just thought it was kind of funny thinking of her. It just was not funny the way Elizabeth Berkley delivered it.
I hear what you're saying. I think the real joke isn't that she calls it Versace. It's that nobody corrects her. It's the look in the room when she is complimented on the dress and she says, why, thank you. It's Versace. And like the other 3 people, the director and the choreographer and the producer, whoever it is, they're all like, oh boy. And then later she bumps into Zach, Kyle MacLachlan, and he corrects her when she says it's a Versace. But he does it in a very charming way. He doesn't make fun of her. He says, Versace. And she's like, what? He's like, the name of the brand. It's pronounced Versace, but it's a beautiful dress and it looks beautiful on you and you have great taste. So he doesn't make her feel bad about saying it wrong. It's kind of just supposed to show you that, boy, he really is charming and he really is quote unquote sweet. He's not. He's a scumbag like everyone else in the movie, but it's designed to make you see why she would think he's charming.
Right. And we're getting a couple clues about Nomi's past because she goes to the HR lady because now she's not a cheetah. She's at a legitimate hotel show. And she has to give her social security number and everything. And like, we saw in My Blue Heaven, either she doesn't even know her social security or for some reason she doesn't want to give it. And she says, I'll just get back to you.
Right, which makes her different from Vinnie Antonelli in My Blue Heaven, who just starts spouting random digits. At least she's honest that she doesn't know it.
Right.
But she does her first show. Everything's going okay. Crystal invites her out to lunch at Spago as like a peace offering. And they have this kind of open, honest conversation where there's this joke that the dancers are only supposed to eat brown rice and vegetables, but then no, they hate brown rice and vegetables. It tastes like dog food. And then Crystal's like, I've eaten dog food. And Nomi's like, so have I. It's this weird like twist on the American dream. These women started off so poor that they at one point in their lives were eating dog food. And now here they are in Vegas eating at Spago, a really fancy restaurant. They've made it. And, they're kind of burying the hatchet. And Crystal once again tells Nomi that she's a whore. And Nomi gets pissed. But Crystal's like, no, you don't get it. We're all whores. I'm a whore too. We do sex things for money. We're whores. It's fine. Don't be so upset about it.
I almost thought that was going to be an intelligent conversation there. We're all whores when you think about it. And then, go into a long soliloquy about everyone in society. I thought that's where this was going. It doesn't go there at all. She actually just goes completely literal because she's like, we're both whores. We put our tits out there for money. It was like, almost like you had an opportunity here.
Yeah, it could have been something more. But then they go to rehearse and Crystal pulls Nomi's top down and then goes to kiss her because Crystal is bisexual and Nomi is kind of responding to it. And then Crystal says, see, you are a whore for the 88th time, if you're keeping track. Why? Why does Crystal care so much to prove to Nomi that she's a whore? I don't know.
Yeah, and in the next scene, once again, Crystal tries to prove that Nomi is a whore because she sets her up for this gig that Nomi thinks is just going to be, you just have to go to this trade show in Vegas and dance on top of this boat and, you'll get $1,000. And she goes, wow, $1,000 for just dancing, clothed, that's great. So she does it. And when she comes down from the boat, the producer's there and is like, Nomi, I got this guy right here and he's going to have a real good time with you tonight. And she's like, I'm not doing it. And she runs out of there.
And then she complains to Zach, and Zach brings that guy over, and Zach berates him and says, how dare you? Don't you ever do anything like that in this town again. You owe Nomi an apology. And, really just cuts him down to size. And Nomi is very impressed, and she feels very protected by Zach. And, of course, 2 seconds after that shady guy walks off stage and Nomi leaves, Zach takes out his giant cell phone and calls him and is like, hey, sorry about that. Just doing that for appearances. You can do whatever you want. So it was all just for show.
Yeah. And there's this weird subplot between these two other dancers that they always bicker backstage and call each other, you stupid bitch. And one brings their kid there and is annoying the other one when they're doing makeup. And during one of the shows, one of them decides that's it. And she takes probably one of these costume jewelry pearl necklaces. And while they're dancing on stage, she opens up her hand and just lets out a number of ball bearings from this necklace or something. And her nemesis trips on them, or actually the guy that's carrying her nemesis trips on them, and she falls down and injures herself, and she's totally out of the show.
Yeah, there's nothing funny about this scene except that the woman who is injured is named Annie. And after she goes down, someone goes to check on her and says, are you okay, Annie? Which obviously makes me think of Smooth Criminal
by Alien Ant Farm.
By Michael Jackson. Of course, you knew that.
I know, but I like the tease. It is a very good remake, Al. A very good cover.
It's really not, though.
It
it's
is.
Really
it's
not.
different. It's completely different.
It's not good, though.
All right, just quick aside, Lemonhead's Mrs. Robinson. That's a great cover.
Sure, they're great covers. I like covers.
okay.
I'm just saying
All
that's a bad one.
I like Alien Ant Farm, but it doesn't beat that Boys of Summer cover that the Ataris did.
I mean, that one's also pretty bad. But Nomi sees what this other woman did to Annie, and she doesn't say anything about it. And that comes up again later. But first, all this sexual tension between Nomi and Zach, well, they give in to that tension when Nomi invites herself back to Zach's place, and they have sex in her pool. And that sex scene, I think it's supposed to be impressive, the way that Nomi is like gyrating on Zach in the pool. But while they're having sex in the pool, there's like this dolphin statue that's shooting water at them. And it seems like a lot of the water is going directly into Nomi's mouth. And I could only think that that's not comfortable and not enjoyable if she's having sex and like something is shooting water into her mouth. I mean, that's like not great, right? I mean, like, does it feel like she's drowning? I just can't imagine that would be pleasurable for her.
Yeah, it's a very unsexy sex scene.
Yes.
It's a shame because, it's actually an amazing pool. Two good-looking people, well shot. It's just probably one of the, unsexiest things that you could possibly do with everything you have there. It's almost like she's thrashing. Honestly, if the director told her, okay, in this scene you're having sex with Kyle MacLachlan, we're going to CGI a shark is biting the lower half of you, and you're thrusting and trying to get out of there, but you're unable to, and we'll later CGI your death. Go! I really think Elizabeth Berkley's character might have acted exactly the same. That's how she, acts on this guy while she's kind of, sitting on him. It's not a very sexy scene, let's just say.
Right.
And then another thing about Nomi is that she's been saying no to everyone else who does cocaine the entire film. And then as she leaves Zach's room in the morning, she just goes by his bed and does a line of coke. And I don't think she ever does cocaine ever again in the film.
Right. I mean, it's first thing in the morning. It's there. Why not? I guess. But then Zach tells her that there's an audition to be Crystal's understudy. And Nomi wants that job. They don't specifically say that it pays more or anything like that. Maybe it's just like the prestige of being the understudy, but she wants the job. She gets it in the audition. But then Crystal feels threatened by Nomi. So basically, Crystal has Nomi removed as her understudy. And, she's a star of the show. She can do that. And now Nomi is furious. And after one of their performances, they're walking down the steps, which earlier in the movie, one of the producers or choreographers had said, watch out for these steps, hold the handrails, they're steep. And Nomi pushes Crystal down, a hard shove. Crystal's clearly injured, broken some bones. And that other dancer who sabotaged Annie before, she saw it, but because Nomi didn't say anything about her, this dancer doesn't rat out Nomi. But remember, Molly works at the show. She's like the seamstress or whatever. She suspects that Nomi pushed her.
Yeah, and now she's a star of the show, and Mama, the bigger lady from Cheetahs, and Al come to visit her. Because someone's like, Nomi, your mother's here. And my mother? And she runs out, and she's so happy to see Mama. And it's kind of a sweet scene, because you can obviously tell that even though this woman's not really her mother, she looks to her sort of, in a motherly way, and she hugs her the way that you hug someone you really care about, and she truly misses her. And even Al comes. He doesn't say, you've made it. Now you're in a real show. And I really thought that this was gonna be a scene that kind of shows you don't need that seedy life anymore. But it's just a weird scene that doesn't go anywhere. It's right there waiting for you to say it, but they don't say it.
Yeah, I mean, Al has a line where he says something like, "It must be weird not having guys come on you anymore," which is like a horrifically sleazy thing to say, but it is also kind of funny in his delivery. That's like his version of a compliment, I guess. But you're right. It is kind of like a weird, pointless scene to like give her closure with these characters that nobody really cares about. But so now that Nomi is the star of the show, she's invited to this big party and Andrew Carver is going to be there. Who's Andrew Carver? He is this singer that Nomi and Molly both really like. You hear him on the radio. You see a poster of him in the trailer early in the movie. There's a thing that he's coming to Vegas and Molly gets really excited because she loves him. And Nomi invites Molly to this party and says, "Hey, come see him." And Molly's like, "I don't want to have anything to do with you. You push that woman down the stairs. You are not the person who is my friend." You know, she knows that she's changed, but Molly does show up at the party anyway, and it's this really heartfelt moment where Nomi runs over and gives her a big hug, and she gets to meet Andrew Carver because Nomi is the star of the show, and she says, "Meet my friend Molly." Molly's very excited, and Andrew Carver starts making the moves on Molly, and Molly's very excited because she thinks he's super handsome, and she has said earlier in the movie that she hasn't had sex in weeks or months or ages or whatever, but she is raped. Andrew Carver and his bodyguards gang rape her. And it is brutal. I mean, they punch her in the face, you know, they hold her down. It's an awful, horrible scene to watch.
And this might be the scene, in my opinion, that earns this film, at least today, an NC-17 rating. Because in most of the film, I'm like, oh, okay, it's boobs. It's a lot of boobs. But, you know, the gyrating, all right, it's, you know, it's sexual. But, like, it's still a hard R. This scene is unnecessarily brutal.
And it's made worse by the fact that Molly is the only good person in this movie. Every other character is despicable and nasty and a backstabber and a liar and a cheat and all of these horrible things, except Molly. Molly is good. She is decent. She met a stranger who is punching her car, and she bought her burger and fries and invited her to move into her trailer with her. She is a good friend. She is a good person. And this is what happens to her.
But she also, like, stumbles downstairs into the middle of this big, like, party of, like, high rollers, and she stumbles to the ground. She loses consciousness, and, like, she has blood dripping down her legs, and somehow the police are not called.
Well, I think that, as awful as it is, that does make sense, because as we find out, the police are not going to be involved because everyone's going to protect Andrew Carver because he is a huge star and he's a big draw in Vegas, and he's going to do all of these residencies, and all of these people have a vested interest in protecting him. And, you know, as we found out with Harvey Weinstein and all of these people in the Me Too movement, like, this shit happens. Awful predators are allowed to be predators. People know it, and people turn the other way.
Yeah, I guess that does hold up there.
Unfortunately, that has stood the test of time. But, you know, obviously Nomi is furious because this happened to her friend, and she's going to call the cops, and Zach slams the payphone down and says, "No, you're not calling anyone. I know all about you. Your real name is Pollyanna Smith," or whatever. I forget what the last name is, but the fact that her name is Pollyanna is relevant because earlier in the movie, the director of the show called her Pollyanna, and she was like, huh? You know, like making a joke on that old book, which I don't think that reference stands the test of time. But anyway, he's like, "I know who you are. Your dad killed your mom and then killed himself, and you've been arrested for soliciting and prostitution and drug abuse and assault with a deadly weapon and all of these things. And you don't want that to come out. You're the star of the show. You don't want to go back to that life. So you're going to keep quiet. And that's the deal." And Nomi is furious. She doesn't want to go along with this, but she decides to take matters into her own hands. She goes to Andrew Carver's suite at whatever hotel he's staying at and takes out her switchblade knife that she had in the very beginning of the movie, holds it to his throat and says, "Make a sound, I'll kill you." And then she brutally beats him. So she gets her revenge.
Yeah, and Nomi visits Molly, and she's in the hospital. She tells Molly that she kicked Andrew Carver's ass. They're friends again. And while she's in the hospital, she also sees that Crystal's there, because Crystal's also recovering from, she did something when she was pushed down the stairs.
Well, she broke her hip in 5 places or something.
Yeah, something bad. She's not going to be headlining any shows for a long time. And Crystal's like, no, it's all good, because she heavily implies that she basically did the same thing to someone before her to get where she was. So she's like, yeah, we all do it to each other. So, it is kind of a sort of a Sith master, Sith apprentice kind of thing.
You teach the person who's going to betray you? I guess that's not a bad analogy.
Have I ever told you the tale of Darth Plagueis?
The Wise? Yes, you have. We were in that opera that time. That space opera. Yeah, and then Nomi, I guess, decides that she doesn't want this life anymore, so she hitchhikes out of Las Vegas, coincidentally getting a ride from the same guy who she got a ride with in the beginning of the movie, which is one of those things that's way too coincidental. But even more than that, I'm like, wait, why is she leaving? Where is she going? What's she doing? I get it that she doesn't want to stay in this role. She doesn't want to be complicit in this world of turning the other way and letting guys get away with rape. And she's going to be a star until someone pushes her down the stairs and it's this awful life. But what's she going to do? We just found out that she was an actual prostitute before this movie. So then the whole movie, Crystal's telling her that she's a whore and she's saying, no, I'm not. Okay, but is she going to go back to that life now? What's she going to do? There's definitely something missing here. If she had said that now she's going to do a legitimate dance, great. If she was going to go to the Alvin Ailey school, maybe the James character inspired her, or maybe she's going to start making dresses because Molly taught her how, or something. Okay, I could buy that. But she's got this really high-paying job. She's making real money for the first time in her life. Why would she leave it without a plan? I just didn't get it. And the ending really pissed me off.
Yeah, you kind of nailed what I was thinking. We mentioned earlier that James had mentioned that he has this other dance show that he's been trying to put on. He can't get the money for it. And eventually we do find out that he's somehow gotten the money to put it on, and she goes to see it. And I'm thinking, wow, it's going to be this really good dance thing. But maybe he just doesn't have the talent in the troupe to put it on. But all it is guys sitting in a chair getting lap dances. And it's not good at all. But you're exactly right. It's perfectly set up that this guy's like, no, I can incorporate Alvin Ailey brilliant dance moves with the sexy stripper pole thing. And you could probably have done something really interesting, but there's nothing there. He could have been like, I'm just going to follow my dreams. I'm heading to Reno to put on another show. And as she leaves, she gives it all up. And it just says, Reno, 800 miles away, and you know what she's doing. Some hint. Because you're right, it makes no sense why she's leaving. I guess you could figure she doesn't want to do what Crystal did, but what is she doing? She has absolutely no leads. I really was thinking as it's pulling back the camera view, I was like, no, this can't be the ending. And then it just says directed by Paul Verhoeven. And I'm like, wow, that's the ending. I was surprised. So what do you think, Al? Does 1995 Showgirls stand the test of time?
I mean, look, this is a pretty bad movie, and I don't think it qualifies as so bad it's good. I get why it's a cult classic, and I get why people like watching it and laughing at it. I do understand that. And look, there are elements that do stand the test of time. Like I was saying about people protecting an abuser, a rapist. Yeah, that happens in showbiz. The idea of a strip club owner manager who forces the women who work there to give him blowjobs and takes a huge cut of their money. I mean, that's a thing that happens. I didn't see Hustlers that came out last year, that J-Lo movie. I think that was part of that plot. But there are some things that stand the test of time. And, even just the fact that you have all of these female characters who are pitted against each other by these men who control them and manipulate them and make a ton of money off of them and their hard work. Like, yeah, all that shit does stand the test of time. The physicality that Elizabeth Berkley does in this movie is impressive. I mean, like, just as a dancer, she's got moves. The problem is, though, the acting is terrible. The writing is terrible. The dialogue is terrible. Like, it's just bad on a lot of levels. The story could have used some improvement. And also, the fact is, this movie isn't sexy. And there's some stuff where the writer, who also wrote Basic Instinct, he was saying it was supposed to be satire, and Paul Verhoeven was saying it was supposed to be satire, and it wasn't necessarily supposed to be a sexy movie, and that was just the marketing, and they got mad about the marketing. Leave your inhibitions at the door was a tagline. Apparently that pissed off the writer. But I kept thinking of the podcast My Dad Wrote a Porno. Do you listen to that, James?
No, I do not.
Darren, member of the Five Timers Club, he told me about this podcast. He got me listening to it. It's really, really funny. And it's about this erotic novel that this guy's dad wrote, hence the name of the podcast. But the dialogue in that erotic novel is terrible. And the sex is described very badly. And it's not sexy. That's just what I was thinking of watching Showgirls. This isn't sexy. The dialogue's clunky. It doesn't do what you think it's going to do. So I'm going to say that this movie does not stand the test of time. Just one other random thought. I know Kyle MacLachlan has done a lot of serious roles and people know him as the guy from Twin Peaks. I just see him as the mayor of Portland from Portlandia. I don't know if you watch that show, but he was such a goofy, earnest character in that show. It's kind of funny for me to see him as like this evil scumbag in this movie, but I just wanted to mention that Portlandia is funny. Anyway, though, James, what do you think? Does Showgirls stand the test of time?
I'll agree with you that the dance moves themselves, they're not bad. The problem is there's way too many of them. This film is way too long. You know, it ends too quickly. Like, that part needed 10 more minutes to end the plot, but the 2 hours and 20 minutes before then is way too long. There's way too many of these dance numbers. But something else about the dance numbers I did like. I really liked some of the side characters. I really liked that redhead, the guy that's sort of like the assistant choreographer who's like yelling, thrust, thrust. He's just kind of funny. I'll disagree with something you said about how you're complaining that the acting isn't good. I don't think the acting in this film has to be that good. But I will agree with you with a lot of the other things you're saying, and that is just the dialogue and plot are just terrible. And I think it's mostly that the plot is bad. Because like we said earlier, the synopsis of this film is really not that bad. It's, you know, girl comes to famous town with nothing but a suitcase, in this case, nothing, and she winds up making it big, but superstardom is not what you thought it would be, and then she somehow leaves that. It's a classic tale, and this film sets up a lot of obvious tropes in this, but it doesn't go anywhere with any of them, along with not taking the bait on all the things that can make this, you know, kind of more cliche. It says, oh, out of nowhere, let's throw in a violent rape here. It just seemed like we haven't seen this character before. It's not like they built up this guy as such a nice guy and it's a commentary on all these men are evil in Vegas. No, he just comes out of nowhere in the third act and violently rapes this character who's not the main star, who's kind of by now a side co-star. I'm sure it went through a lot of script rewrites. It needed one more, and it needed a big editing job, and there's probably a decent film somewhere in here, but they just filmed it wrong, and it's not sexy, and the music is probably bad, and they needed a better choreographer maybe. I don't know, but something's wrong with the sexiness, because Coyote Ugly, there was no nudity, and that was sexier. This film is just, it's not done well. It's not fun bad. It's just kind of boring at points, and there's one other big thing that makes this film not stand the test of time. You know what that is, Al?
No, what's that?
You wouldn't think it, but it's one person. Celine Dion.
Huh?
The reason I say that is because in 1995, this is really the tail end of your Las Vegas is the city of nothing but sin and sex and titty shows. Because in the late 90s, you started having these hotels like New York, New York, come bring the family, it's roller coasters, and there's a Coney Island part, and Celine Dion is now going to be here. And I've been to Las Vegas several times in the last few years for various reasons, conventions and stuff. And for the last 5 years, Boys to Men has been there, and Britney Spears was there. It's really not headlined on the Strip, at least, by Topless Show at the Borgata, the Bellagio, rather. You're not going to see that. You'll see that at some of the other casinos, but the Cosmopolitan and at these really fancy ones, the Venetian, it's not headlined by the boob show. It's headlined by Cirque du Soleil doing, the music of the Beatles. That's what it is. And it's really outdated that this is how you make it in Las Vegas. Because, once she's the headliner, there's press conferences. And it's the kind of thing you will see legitimately, Britney Spears do a press show when there's, when she decides she's doing a residency at Planet Hollywood, which is what she did for a year or something. And it's just very outdated that a woman could, or that anyone could become famous really, by doing the topless dance show circuit in Las Vegas. So that, and with all the other problems, I'm going to say that this film does not stand the test of time.
I agree. I would have been very surprised if you had said yes. So that's it for us this week. Next week, we're going to talk about another movie that is, I guess, show business adjacent, or maybe more show business related than Showgirls. We are going to talk about The Bodyguard. I am excited to see this movie. I've never watched it before. I am familiar with the song. I'm sure you can expect both of us to sing it a lot, or maybe just once. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But you don't want to miss that episode. So make sure you're subscribed on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. Talk to us on social media. We are at Test of Time Pod. We love hearing from you. Tell us your thoughts on Showgirls, or better yet, tell us how you're going to vote. Tell us your voting plan. That's more important. That's way more important than just tweeting at us. You have permission to not tweet at us if you register to vote, or convince someone else to register to vote, or make a voting plan. More important, bringing it back to the beginning. It's all full circle. Goodbye, everybody.
Vote.